At the end of May in 2022, we set out on our first trip of the year, which was a backpacking trip at Round Valley Reservoir. We had about 5 miles to hike around the lake to get to our campsite, and we were very excited because this was a dog-friendly campsite, and it was going to be Redford's first official backpacking trip of the year. So we wanted to see what he thought of backpacking. We already know he loves camping. We ended up with this great site right along the lake, which was very secluded, and it ended up being beautiful weather. Make sure that you are subscribed so that you can come along with us as we let new adventures begin in part 3 of our trip to Round Valley Reservoir.
So don't let the weight of the world slow you down, and if you search for the meaning of life, it won't be found. So take your insecurities and leave them all behind. Let's learn to make the most of our time.
One of the best things about camping at Round Valley Reservoir has to be the sunrises and sunsets. Every night and every morning that we were there, we were treated to beautiful colors across the sky that reflected in the water. Luckily, our second night there, the wood was a little drier, and we seemed to have worked out the issues with getting the fire started, so we were much better at it the second night. Once again, Redford was the first one to go to bed. He doesn't like when it gets dark out. He feels more comfortable going into the Scamp when we're RVing, or in this case, going into the tent. So he got to bed nice and early, so he was ready to get up nice and early. Good morning. Okay. Okay. After he was well rested, Redford was anxiously awaiting his morning walk. And just like all the other mornings, we were greeted to a beautiful sunrise and a nice, quiet, peaceful lake before all the other campers got up and before there were boats out on the reservoir. This perfectly still, clear body of water actually comes with some rather unsettling stories. Round Valley Reservoir is also known as the Bermuda Triangle of New Jersey because 26 people have drowned in the reservoir, and 6 of them were never found. There are stories of fishermen getting their anchors snagged on things and then being pulled from the boat. There are stories of strangely colored lights hovering above the water at night, and lots of other unexplained occurrences. Since there was a small farming community on this piece of land before it was flooded and turned into a reservoir, they say that there are still many structures in the valley that are intact underwater, and there's also a lot of debris in there because not everything was cleaned out. So they say that there are lots of things that you can get snagged on, and it can actually be rather dangerous to go into the water. So I recommend swimming only at the swimming beach, which is at the far end past the parking area, and making sure that you are wearing a life jacket if you are kayaking or doing any sort of water sports so that you stay at the top of the water. was our last morning at the campground at Round Valley Reservoir. So I started to make breakfast, our usual oatmeal, which is always an easy breakfast when we are backpacking. Just boil water and throw it together. We were going to start to pack things up to start the 5-mile hike back to the car. This was such an enjoyable campsite for the weekend. Since it was a holiday weekend, we were very lucky to have a site that was so secluded, and even though it wasn't the quietest experience in the campground, it was probably the best we were going to get for a holiday weekend, especially being this close to a lake. And we started to pack our stuff into our backpacks, which was a bit of a challenge, especially packing the second time. For some reason, that's always harder. And our pillows worked out great. We slept so much better than we used to with our inflatable pillows. So we're definitely going to be sticking with our giant, oversized pillows that are not really meant to be for backpacking. Red got saddled up with his backpack, which was also a little bit lighter now that he had eaten some of his food, and we didn't have to carry as much water on the way out because we knew that we would be able to fill up when we got back to the ranger station. I folded up his food and water containers. These worked out great. They're going to stay in his backpack so that every time we go out, they are going to be his food and water bowls because they are very light, they are resealable, and they fit great in his rough wear backpack. So happy with our sleeping gear and happy with the gear that Redford has. But most importantly, Redford was really good on this trip, so I think that he's going to get to do some future backpacking trips. The day that we were hiking out was a bit warmer than the day that we had hiked in because right before we hiked in it had been raining. So that made it nice and cool, made the hike feel easier. So it definitely felt more challenging when we were hiking out, but we had peace of mind because we had already used the All Trails app to track the mileage and we knew what the terrain was like. So we just took our time, we took more breaks and paused in the shade and made sure that we stayed hydrated, but it definitely felt more challenging on the way out because of the heat. Made it. I felt harder today than it did going in. I feel like because it's hotter today. Definitely felt it, but we did it. All right.
Get the dog in there.
Sandwiches and coffee.
Yeah.
We randomly pulled over and got our post-hike meal. The bagel shop was closed, so we ended up with barbecue, which is really kind of a neat, different sort of treat. Got some, pulled pork and pulled chicken sandwiches and empanadas and like 10 different kinds of little sauces. Very good, because I am starving. We made it back to the Jeep and we were able to get food, so we have fixed our calorie deficit because we were both starving. And I would say overall, Red did great on his first backpacking trip. It was his first time backpacking, so we've taken him out hiking with his backpack just to kind of get him used to it in previous seasons, but he's never done an overnight trip with it. So this was his first overnight backpacking trip, and he's never slept in a tent before. So he's done camping in the Jeep, he's done a lot of camping with the Scamp, and he loves the Scamp. We were kind of nervous that maybe he was a little spoiled, that he would be, he wouldn't settle because he didn't have the bed. But he actually, his first night he was a little antsy, but that's everybody, their first night camping. You don't sleep as well. You have to get used to it. Second night he did great. He was very snuggly. He slept on top of me and then slept on top of Pat for half the night. So that was funny. But he really seemed to have a great time. So we're going to have to do this again. We're already looking at when we can book that campsite again because this was supposed to be a kayaking trip, right? We had to revamp our packing really quickly and switch gears because of the weather. So maybe in a month or so, we're going to try to book that same site and put the kayaks on the Jeep and head up there and kayak across the lake to get to that really great spot, because the lake is beautiful and I feel like that's the central feature of that park. So we will definitely be back. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for coming along with us on this trip to Round Valley Reservoir. If you enjoyed the video, make sure that you are subscribed and hit the notification bell so that you will know as soon as we post future videos. And if you would like to support the production of our videos, you can go over to Patreon. For as little as $1, you will get early access to our videos, and during that time they are completely ad-free. You'll also get to see a little bit of behind the scenes of what we are working on, what trips are coming up, and what kind of adventures you have to look forward to. So thanks for being here. We appreciate you spending your time with us, and we look forward to sharing our travels with you.
Well, you worried about you and me, the injustice, the next president to be, the news and what you hear, your career. It's time for you to face those fears, and it's all fair to be aware, and I'll be there. So don't be scared, just take a deep breath of air. And 1, 2, 3 to 10, you begin to focus again. And though time flies, we'll have enough to realize this bigger than the both of us.